Welcome back to the homestead and part 2 of our spring CF Moto Let's Get Ready to Ride series, whatever you want to call it. But you know, we're in the shop here, it's a rainy day. You just saw us clean out the air filter, check everything there. So now what we're going to do is we're going to change the oil and change the transmission fluid. In our case, we have the lift, so we've gone all the way up. We're going to pull the belly pan off to do the oil and the transmission fluid and just check all of our U-joints. And we may or may not get the differentials in this video. We may do the differentials in the greasing video. We'll see. So 10 millimeter. There's 4 bolts that hold this pan on. And this pan doesn't have to come off for... It probably doesn't even have to come off at all, but it's much easier for you guys to see. So we're going to spin it off. And you certainly could use an impact or something for this if you want. I just happen to have the 10 millimeter laying there from doing the air filter, so that's what I grabbed. And yeah, I probably should have left 1 bolt in there, right? Okay, so we'll take that out of the way. So what we have here, on the 1000, you have a separated oil galley, whatever you want to call it. The transmission has its own set of plugs, and the motor has its own set of plugs. So the drain plug for the motor is right there, and the drain plug for the transmission is right there. So we're going to go ahead and drain both of those. We're going to kind of look around, make sure we don't see anything really obviously wrong while we're right up in here. And so far everything looks good. There is a handful of U-joints that you can look at and make sure nothing's broke, or you can grab the shaft, make sure nothing's loose. Turn the tires. Look at that joint. And there's also right up in here, I'm not sure I'm going to be able to show you this, but right up in here there's another one of those breather caps, and this is for the belt. So we want to look down in there and see what's in it. If it's full of water, we want to be really concerned and take the cover off the belt. In our case, it looks to be mostly dirt, which is probably dust that got in there. So we always want to check that. And we take our light, we want to look up in the hole. In our case, there's quite a bit of stuff in the hole. So we're going to actually take a little screwdriver. I'm going to clean that hole out. Just to make sure. Tight spot, but it's doable. There we go. And if you come back around and look up through here, you might get a really good view of it right through there. But this is the little thing that we were just playing with. And that's in the intake line to the actual belt. Oh, might have found the fuel filter. All right, let's get the oil drained. and the transmission drain. Let's go get a couple tools.
What size socket is that?
This is a 3/4 inch socket. So you'll see that doesn't look too bad. It's still pretty clean. We change our oil way more frequently than the manufacturer recommends. You know, these things work in an extreme environment all the time. It's always dusty. You're always beating on them, always, you know, mudding, whatever you're doing. So it's pretty cheap insurance. There's a little magnet there. It's always good to clean the metal shavings off that. And some small, like grayish powder is normal. That's just normal wear of an engine. If you start seeing chunks or pieces or a lot of it, you probably got a bigger problem. We're on the end of that. And we change the front and rear end and the transmission every oil change. And that's way overkill. But gear oil is really, really cheap, and we have a lift. So I think it takes 2 to 2.5 quarts of gear oil total to do everything, all 3 pieces. So it's just kind of cheap, cheap insurance. I'm gonna go get a wrench for that.
And what size is that?
17 millimeter. Which is not the same thing as 3/4. Now on this one, I'm gonna take my little screwdriver and just clean any dirt up and around the bolt. Not that we're opening up access downward into the engine or anything, but just one less piece of dirt to deal with. You guys get to see me make a mess, right? When I dump the oil pan. Now it's worth noting that the transmission is sealed, so it's going to come out really slow unless we take the vent out. The dipstick out. Yeah, you see how that picked up when I took the dipstick out? And here's what I mean about that gray sludge on the magnet. You'll see it right there. It's just a little bit. It's mostly oil, but you'll see a little bit of metal on that magnet. So we're going to clean that off. And that also gives you kind of a early warning if something's going really wrong. Like if next oil change we take that off and that's just covered in metal, lots of big pieces or something, or even a big pile of that gray stuff, we might know something's going sideways and we might want to look into it. So we're going to let that drain, put the drain plugs back in, the skid plate back on, and we'll bring you back when we're ready to fill these things up. Alright, so it's all drained. We've put our drain plugs back in, snugged them up. You want to be careful you don't tighten those too tight. You could probably look in the manual. It's probably a torque spec if you're unsure, you know, what is tight. They are just aluminum cases on the engine and transmission, so you don't want to strip one of those plugs out. It's going to make for a long day. So it might be a little hard to see, but the oil filter is behind this housing right here with these three bolts in it, and they are, I believe, 8 millimeter. So I'm going to take this one off first up top because it has a transmission vent on it, and that'll get that out of my way. And we'll set that down out of the way. And there's going to be some oil run out of that. It's just what it is. filter, if we take our little screwdriver, just grab our filter. Yank it out of there. We'll grab ourselves another filter. This is the one we use. Comes from our local CF Moto dealer. Can be found online too. One thing I will note, I've run into this previously, they don't give you a new O-ring with the filter, and you probably don't need one for a while, but eventually that O-ring is going to leak, so I need to remember to order one of those. But I do have a video, and I'll try to find a link and leave it down below, where we had a little bit of an oil leak. And you see there's a little bit of dirt down in there from where I just took it apart. If I didn't wash this all out and put that back together, that little dirt would cause just a little space around that O-ring. So we're going to grab some brake clean and we're going to wash this all off. Then we're going to put the filter back in. So hold on, I'll be right back with some brake clean. Alright, so I'm just going to wash this off. I'm going to even wash the dirt off in it just so I don't get anything back in there. But now you see how clean that is all the way around there. I'm going to let it sit like that for the second and dry. I'm going to wash the O-ring off. I like to drag it between my fingers like that and just make sure there's no dirt on it. Pick a clean spot. We're pretty happy with that. Back on. Rag. And your filter can only go in one way. This end is solid, that end's got a big hole in it. So that end with the hole in it is going to go in. And if you look up in there, there's a port on the engine that sucks oil or pushes oil. I'm not sure which way the oil goes, but either way. So that's going to go in there like that. And then we're going to put our cover back on. Index our bolt holes, which they are symmetrical, so it doesn't matter. We're going to start 2, and then we're going to grab the one with the vent. Again, I don't ever tighten any bolts until I have them all started, because if the cover's turned just a little bit, you may have a hard time getting the last bolt started. It'd be easy to damage some threads. So then we put the vent up in there, and then we're going to give you a shot once I get my big old hands out of the way. So there's the cover back in loose. You'll see we put the vent up in here for the transmission. And now we'll go ahead and tighten those up. So the last thing I like to do before I fill it back up is, because everything's covered in oil, and that's where your oil leak is going to be, if you have one, I like to wash it all down. That way, that will dry off here in a little bit. And when we start it after we change the oil, we can tell if there's any oil seeping out of there. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to get our oil, our gear oil, and our funnels, and we'll bring you back here in just a second and show you how to fill the transmission and the engine. So we're going to put in our Valvoline 1040 synthetic motorcycle 4-stroke oil. This is what we use. You can get all sorts of different oils. That's opinions we won't even go down that road on. But this holds 3.06 quarts. So just a drop over 3 quarts. So what I do actually is I take the whole dipstick extension tube out. And then I have this funky funnel I found at like AutoZone, if I remember right. And that lets me get up where I need to be. I'm going to open all of my oil. So now I'm going to just hold the funnel up like that. I probably could let this thing down another 3 or 4 feet, would help a lot.
Want me to let it down some?
Yeah, go ahead and let it down. This funnel doesn't run real fast, so if you can't see in the funnel, you may end up actually overfilling the funnel. So we're going to go ahead and put in 3.06 quarts of oil, and we won't bore you with that whole 3.06. We'll bring you back in just a second and show you how we fill the transmission. So we've got our 3.06 quarts of oil back in the engine, and I'm going to screw my dipstick extension back in. Light. And just snug that up by hand, being careful not to rip any of the wires off anything. And you can check the oil now, but it's going to be a little overfull because the filter's not full. So now the next thing we have to do is we have to fill the transmission. And that's a bit more interesting. So that's right up in here. Let's see who's going to get you some light and show you that. We have found the easiest way to fill that is to take the passenger seat out, and there's an access panel, and your long funnel goes down in there. And what the other thing we've done too is we're just using an STP gear oil, I think it's 7590. 8090. But we have just a trash bottle that we've had kicking around, and we've gone ahead and filled that to 0.6 liters, which is what the transmission holds. So that when we get up in there, we're only putting in what it needs. We're not putting in, we're not having to keep checking it. You'll want to verify that. You don't want to trust the manual for sure the first time around. You always want to verify for yourself. So I'm going to get the seat out and get the access panel opened up, and I'll grab the camera and show you what I'm doing. Okay, so we're up inside the machine. As you can see here, I've got the passenger seat out. It's actually sitting in the driver's seat. I've got all my needed stuff. Sue's still down on the ground. She's going to guide the funnel. Right in here, let me get myself placed so I can not bounce around so much on you guys. Right in here is an access panel that we can pull off. And see, right there is the where Sue's finger is the fill for the transmission. So we're going to put our funnel in there, just like so. And let me see if I can set you guys up. See if I can set you guys up somewhere where you can watch what I'm doing. And hopefully you don't fall off, right? I think you can probably see what I'm doing right there. Let's try that. So now I'm just going to fill my funnel. All right, so we're going to put our transmission dipstick back in, right up in there. I guess we're going to go up top and see if we can find it. Just drops right down in from up here, just like that. So that's it for the oil change and the transmission fluid change. I do want to note that we used 80/90 on the CF Moto 1000. The 1000 has what they call a dry clutch. The 500 and 800, the clutch is part of the engine or something, and it does take a different fluid, so consult your manual on that. So what we're going to do is we're going to wrap this video up and come back in the next part and do the front and rear differential, probably grease everything, check the CV joints, and then we're going to go from there. So we really appreciate you guys watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and come out and back and watch us work on the differentials in this.